like I said, thanks everybody for coming to Screenwriting 101, as we're calling it. This is going to be a basic intro to screenwriting and what a screenplay looks like and how it's different from prose and how you can write your own. My name's Chad Brown, and I am a workshop assistant with the Center for Creativity at Pitt. A little about me, I did my undergrad in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, and I went to a film school at Virginia Commonwealth University. And in that program was kind of run like a trade school. They were really prepping us to work on large scale Hollywood style productions. So every student kind of selected a track, be it camera department, directing, producing, and developed their skills there. And what I focused in a lot was screenwriting, as well as the sound department. But for the purposes of this workshop, screenwriting. Nice to meet you. Woo Hollywood. Okay. Well, yes, woo Hollywood. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how the Hollywood system differs from independent film. Both have their merits, pros and cons. So we'll get into that a little bit in the slideshow, which I'm going to start sharing now. So before we get started, I'll go ahead and remind everybody that if you would like OCC outside the classroom curriculum credit for this, an email is going to be coming a little bit later after the workshop with details on how you can do that. I think that's a really great program, and definitely cool that Pitt does that. All right, so like I said, this is an introduction to screenwriting presented by the Center for Creativity. We're just gonna dive right into the basics. So our objectives today, we're gonna talk about where the writer fits into the filmmaking process, all the basic elements of a screenplay, and kind of the best practices for screenwriting. Like I said, how that's different from maybe a novel or a poem for that matter. Any other kind of writing. A screenplay is a very different kind of animal. And then at the end, if we have time, we'll get into a collaborative storytelling exercise to kind of break the ice and get us thinking like screenwriters. All right, so first, we're going to talk about the Hollywood system. And this is a super, as I say, super reductive edition. This is a basic flow chart of kind of the hierarchy of how a Hollywood production would work. So at the top, you obviously have the major studio, and the studio is providing all of the money for the production, and they control the production itself as well as financing and distribution of the finished film. So these are your traditional big studios. You can think about Warner Brothers or MGM or Lionsgate, kind of these larger companies that are putting out films. And below them, you have producers. And there are many different kinds of producers, but basically they are there to keep things on time, on budget, and fulfill the needs of the studio on the production itself. And below the producer, typically you think of the director as being the, artistic genius. They're the ones with the name recognition, but they're really answering to the producers and the studio. And they're directing the cast, your actors, and the crew. Off to the side, you can see there's the writer over there. No lines leading away from the writer. They kind of answer to the director and the producers. The writer writes. The writer writes their screenplay, sells it to a studio. The studio pays the writer for production distribution rights. And from that point, it's really not the writer's story anymore. Obviously, the perks are jobs and money, but sometimes the writer could even be kicked off of the production. They could be replaced by another writer who is going to do additional drafts that are more in line with what the director or producers want out of the story. So it's a real give and take, and take it for what it is. Jobs and money are also great things in an artistic industry. So the writer doesn't have a lot of control in Hollywood. And again, super reductive addition. This is how the big studio system works. But moving on to independent filmmaking, anything outside of the studio system could be qualified as independent filmmaking. The important thing is that roles are often a lot more fluid depending on um, financing and distribution models that are used on the independent film. And there are as many different ways to structure an independent film as there are films. And as you can see, this flowchart is kind of a web. People can have multiple different roles. This is where you see a lot of writer, director in the same person. Could just be a director and a couple of their friends. It's very freewheeling, and the benefit here, if I can get the slide to go, because of those blurred lines in production hierarchy, things can be a lot more democratic and could lead to more creative control for the writer. There may or may not be major studio involvement. Like I said, there are alternative financing and distribution models, such as the film festival circuits. So there's less guaranteed jobs and money, but potentially more creative control in independent filmmaking. So I go through these basic hierarchies just to show you the general landscape that a writer might find themselves in the film industry. Like I said, all of this is always changing, especially nowadays with web platforms like Netflix and Amazon, even YouTube. These things are constantly in flux, but these are the basics that you can just keep in the back of your head. All right, so now we're going to go into the basics of a screenplay. There are a lot of different templates that you can use in whatever operating system your computer happens to have, or if you're on a typewriter, there's a template you can use too. But the basics are your font is going to be a Courier 12 point, and with the 1-inch margins on top, bottom, and right, and 1.5-inch margin on the left. That leaves you 55 lines of text on the page. And that should roughly come out with actions and dialogues to about 1 minute of screen time. So I'm going to go into more of that later, how a screenplay is a working document, but that's your first big example of how a screenplay is different than a novel. It's meant to be read at a certain tempo, if you will. So that 1 page to 1 minute is the standard we're shooting for. Obviously, if there's big chunks of action or a ton of dialogue, that varies a little bit, but you can roughly say a 90-page screenplay is going to be an hour-and-a-half movie. Fun fact, yeah, that extra room for the hole punch on the left margin. I thought that was fun. Who uses a hole punch anymore? All right, so the first element is your slug lines, also called scene headings. And that's what you can see here, the interior, scene, night. Those are the only pieces of information that a slug line needs to have that tells you where this particular scene is taking place. It's either interior or exterior, has a generic name of the location. It could be bar, Max's house, the office, whatever, and either day or night. Sometimes you see people put dusk or dawn or morning in there, but that's really not correct. This is for the cinematographers and the lighting department to know if they are lighting a nighttime scene or a daytime scene. So that's your basic slug line, and that's where all scenes start. Boom, right there in the red box. And y'all, please let me know if I'm going too fast. Like I said, this is my first one, and I tend to ramble on. So if I'm going too fast or too slow, you won't hurt my feelings. You can just let me know in the chat. All right. Subheadings come directly below your slug lines, and those are usually written in bold all caps, and either part of the slug line or directly beneath it. And those are going to be like rooms or locations within a larger location. I'll give you two examples of those. So here, this is just some made up nonsense that I wrote up really quick. You can see both another part of the location and then back to the first area. Those are subheadings underneath the slug line, as you can see there. And as you can see in the first area, every time you're moving the camera back between locations, you want to indicate that. And here is a subheading within the slug line, and this is acceptable as well. This is from a script from The Office. As you can see, they have the subheading indicating Jim and Dwight's desk clump kind of in the middle of the office. The next slug line might say interior office, break room, D1. And that D1 is just day one. This is a shooting script. So there you have two options, and it's kind of just a personal preference. Working scripts you might want to format them a little bit differently than a spec script, but it's really just personal preference. Both are acceptable. All right, and then you come to the meat of the scene, and that is action descriptions. And this is where you're telling the reader what is happening visually. So when you're writing a screenplay, you're always thinking through the eyes of the camera, through the eyes of the audience, what's happening. So you want to write in the present tense and third person. You're kind of the fly on the wall, observing what's happening. You really want to avoid describing subtext and hidden emotions and thoughts, because that kind of stuff is not visually apparent. You want to write with a certain level of economy and trust that your reader is going to pick up on the subtext. If you have planted it strongly enough, they should be able to pick it up on their own. And this is a big place where a screenplay diverges from prose and maybe some other writing that you've done. Boom, paragraph. And as you can see, so far everything's been left justified, just blocks of text right there. The all caps that you see in there are both characters and props in the first instance that they appear on screen, and that's just to highlight them to the director or cinematographers, whoever is reading the script, say, hey, we need a birthday card right here. Or this is the first time we're meeting this character, so this is important, pay attention. And as you can see, the little asterisk there, a prop is an object that is crucial to the narrative or that a character interacts with. Everything else is set decoration, but specifically things that are interacted with that are crucial to the narrative are props. So you can also use all caps judiciously, as I say, for sounds and actions if they're like really crucial. You got to highlight that point. Big bang, you can write that in all caps. All right, moving into dialogue, as you can see, it's kind of centered in the middle, kind of the middle third of the page, if you will. You have your character's name followed by their dialogue. And this is a little different than, say, a stage script for the theater. But again, it keeps things to that 1 page to 1 minute. As you can see, I wanted to point out that this is not centered. It's still left justified. You just have a shorter column that your dialogue goes in. And that's part of the template that you'll use. So don't worry about measuring your dialogue or anything like that. It's all included in whatever template you use. One thing that's kind of hard to explain is parentheticals. So I'm going to do my best here. Often adverbs, and this is how a line is delivered. As you can see, slyly or something like that. And you really, this is a point that you could run into overreaching as a writer into the director's domain by giving too much direction to the future actors, which is something that you don't want to do as a writer. You don't want to do the director's job for them. But if it's, again, if it's narratively crucial, this is where you'd use a parenthetical. Yeah, just how the line is delivered, especially if it's whispered or shouted, something like that. It's a good place to use it. Your other modifiers are voiceover, a VO beside the character's name, or off-screen OS beside the character's name. They're not telling you how the dialogue is delivered, but where, you could say. So they're not technically parentheticals, but the difference is a voiceover is happening outside of this main story timeline. A character remembering something that happened in the past, whereas off screen is, the audience just can't see that character, but they're present in that diegetic story world. And I think this is last transitions, fade to black, cut to, these kind of things. All caps with a colon, right justified. If there are transitions out of a scene, transitions into a scene will be left justified. I wish I had a better example there, but if it was a fade in, that would be on the left side, followed by the action descriptions, whereas fade to black or cut to out of a scene is going to be on the right side. Okay, and here is my funny joke where I pause for questions. This is kind of a scene that's unfolding right before us. So any questions on the basics of screenplay format?
Is there an exception, like when you're introducing characters for the first time? Is there a time when you don't need to capitalize their names?
Um, are you thinking of a specific example?
Um, just like because I know in one of your slides, like, um, or like if you're writing something and then the character is like it's the first time we see them, and their name is like in all caps, like if there's like a waiter or something
Mm-hmm.
that pops in and out and they don't have any dialogue, do you have to capitalize that?
Yeah, you would. Um, that would be like a featured extra. But the reason you're capitalizing it is to draw attention to that. So a casting director can read through the script really quickly and see, okay, we need a waiter in this scene and we need this person in this scene and that kind of stuff. And they can schedule actors and cast who they need. So really always the first time you see a character that is worth writing about, then capitalize their name. Yeah, I think if there was, like, for instance, a crowd like on the street, behind your principal actor, you don't need to say, like, the milkman passes by and then, like, some party goers go this way, but they'll fill in the crowd behind them. But if they're featured, like, say, a waiter, definitely capitalize. Let's go on to screenwriter's voice, and I think we can dive into more some of these kind of questions that are coming up here, where a screenplay is a working document. Um, I guess different from a novel that you read a couple of chapters before you go to bed. A screenplay is more than just the story. It has to be able to be referenced and referenced quickly by a lot of people with a minimum of gray area or confusion, because time is money. And if people are asking questions like, um, do we need this character in this scene? Like, where is this taking place? These kind of things, it really slows the production down, and it's going to cost that studio who's giving you all the money, and they're not going to be very happy about it. So as I say here, the screenwriter has the privilege to introduce us to the story, but even though that's their baby, they're only one of the artists that's involved, one of the voices that's involved in the finished product. So letting go of some of that control and inviting collaboration is a big part of being a screenwriter. And that's why you, like I say here, don't overwrite emotion, don't include non-essential camera moves. You can include some, but every time the camera pans to the left, don't write that in. The camera operator and the DP are going to figure that out. Director of photography, sorry, are going to figure that out. Just don't do another person's job for them. Like I said, it's a team effort, even though it's your story coming from your head and your heart. You're inviting people that you hopefully want to work with if you're going the indie route. You're inviting collaborators, and that can be a hard thing to overcome, especially coming from writing fiction or something like that. It can be hard to let go, for sure. So, like I said, no one will ever see your words. You can choose all the best words. You can write beautifully. But the only people that will ever see it are the studio agents who pay you for the script, and the director, and a few above the line people, creatives. So the more important thing is that you write clearly and deliberately, to convey all the meaning that you think needs to be there very, very clearly, so it doesn't get lost in translation, excuse me. I like to say, when in doubt, cut. There's nothing wrong with economy, and these kind of projects will definitely grow during production, during rewrites. It's okay to be a little sparse, a little more. This is a terrible analogy. A little more Ernest Hemingway than Herman Melville, if you will. We don't need 300 pages about whales. You just need to say there's a killer whale. Okay, let me just make sure I got everything here. Oh, I will go back for a second here, because I was talking about not including extraneous details, and that even comes down to writing characters' races. If this isn't a story about race, like Selma, if you guys saw that movie a couple of years ago, really consider if it's important to write that, because there is Hollywood and the film industry, like so many other things, do tend to have a white male gaze, and that's something that can be overcome and is very slowly being overcome. If you guys remember #OscarsSoWhite, it's a serious issue. So consider if a character's race is necessary to the plot, and if it's not, leave that up to the casting director and the director, him or herself, to figure out. That kind of detail just cuts people out. So that's the end of that soapbox, I guess. All right, let's go on and let's tell a story. All right, this is a storytelling exercise that you guys can feel free to unmute yourselves for. And I did it once before, so I'm curious to see what we come up with. I'm going to give you the 10 basic plot beats of a story. There's a lot of different ways to break down a plot, but I'm breaking it down into these 10, which are pretty common. And this is the way a narrative is structured. starting with your opening image. That's where you meet your hero, your protagonist. They get some bad news, which shatters their world. That's your inciting incident. Plot point 1 is when the hero chooses to accept the challenge and start the quest that was presented to them with the inciting incident. Rising action, conflicts and obstacles and stakes are all rising. Things are getting harder as the journey progresses. The bad guys are closing in. Your hero starts to unravel. There's maybe some minor defeat. Then you have the dark soul of the night, where, wow, dark night of the soul, if you will. All hope is lost. This is the lowest emotional point for your hero. But they get some new info that gives them hope for one final effort. And then finally you come to the climax, which is the final confrontation with the big bad guy, the boss battle, as I call it here, that either goes well or poorly. And then you have falling action, where things have changed, reactions to the climax, characters are tying up loose ends, kind of your subplots and that kind of thing. And then finally, your resolution, where you see all of your characters, your hero, in their new normal situation, which is contrasted with the opening image, where they were naive and hadn't gone on this quest. And that kind of leaves you with the question of where do they go from here? So those are your basic plot points. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to give you a resolution in screenplay format, and then we're going to start with an opening image and work our way to that resolution. So we're writing ourselves into the resolution. I always struggle with wrapping stories up, writing conclusions. So we're going to start with the fun part, which is where do we find them and how do we get here through all the plot points. So here's our resolution. This is our final scene. Exterior lakeshore night. The lake is glowing with the final violet streaks of the setting sun. The woman stands at its edge, the handle of a battered briefcase clenched in her white-knuckled fist. The woman says, "You'll haunt me no more. Take your secrets down with you." She throws the briefcase with all of her might and watches as it splashes, floats for a moment, and sinks beneath the inky waters. The edge of a smile flickers on her face. Without a second glance, she turns and walks away. The cicadas begin singing. Fade to black. All right, if everyone has that image in their minds, we can go back to the basic plot points. So shout it out. Let's tell a story together. First, we need an opening image. So obviously we have a woman, we have a briefcase, which might indicate something.
Can you show that again one more time?
Sure, yeah. Let's land right here. So maybe the cicadas indicate a bit of a location. There's a lake, obviously nearby, but we don't know exactly what lake.
I feel like the opening image may be of a woman that's struggling with something.
A woman struggling with something. Yeah, definitely. What is she struggling with?
Seeing that she's throwing off an old briefcase and watch it sink, and then a flicker of smile. Wonder if it's business relationship, personal relationship, something she got herself into.
Maybe some bad business dealings. Dig it. Okay.
Could start with the contents of the briefcase and then like move into what Sharon was saying about like showing her and maybe looking at the contents of the briefcase.
Mhm. And all right, what are the contents of that briefcase?
I pictured like pictures, like criminal court, like criminal pictures and like documents and file reports and evidence reports and stuff like that.
Ooh, I like it. Okay. Okay. Who are these pictures of? Is it of her or maybe someone else?
It feels like buried evidence, like she's burying evidence and then she's glad she got rid of it.
Burying evidence. I like it. Absolutely. All right. So we meet the woman. Is the inciting incident that she finds out what's in this briefcase, this evidence?
I feel like when we meet the woman in the beginning, she don't have that briefcase. You probably meet her in a situation that will lead to her getting the briefcase. Maybe the inciting incident is the things that she have in the briefcase.
Cool.
Or that she's looking for someone and they turn out not to be what she thinks they are. So there's some kind of civil case.
A civil case. Okay. Okay. So she's like a paralegal or a lawyer?
No, I think it's more like she's looking for information about someone.
Okay. Okay.
And that person has, either financial or personal repercussions for her that she needs all this information, whether it's for a court case or not. She's gathering information on this person,
Cool.
which we don't know about yet.
Okay. Dig it. Okay. So she has to accept a quest. She has to start her journey that we're going to see unfold. What is that quest?
It's like mom's not dead. Mom's not really dead. And there's
Oh my God, that's amazing. Mom's not really dead. That's so great. I love that. Yes.
at the end, she's like, oh yeah, no, yeah, well, you'll stay dead.
Oh my God. That's so dark. I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so she's got to face some conflicts. She's got to face some obstacles. What is she going to find on her quest?
So we meet the woman. She's the hero of this journey. Then she got some bad news that shatter her ordinary world or her former world.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'm thinking, was the thing in the end that she put the content in that briefcase and threw it out. And then the plot point one, he will choose to accept the challenge. So then she's making a decision at this point, at the end of Act 1 now, she's making a decision. I still not solid in my mind on what's happening between the inciting incident and her decision, like what went down in her world with this briefcase. I heard someone said maybe she's a lawyer, maybe she's an intern. Well, the person said she's a lawyer, maybe she's an intern, maybe she came into some information that she shouldn't come across, something kind of drastic. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah. And Celeste, I like that mom's not really dead, obviously. That could be a huge inciting incident in her quest to find out where the mom really is. Is it her mom? Someone else's mom?
And what really happened? If this is what she always believed is a lie, what really happened?
Yeah.
What is the truth?
That's a perfect quest to go on. Yeah.
Does she want to know it? The whole plot revolves around her conflict of the more she finds out, does she really want to know anymore?
Wow.
If she
Yes.
had this particular picture of who her mother was, and then it's just completely shattered, does she want to continue into this dark space that the story is drawing her?
Amazing. Yes. See, that sounds to me, that sounds like such a great dark night of the soul. Like, you've uncovered this horrible story. Do you want to really know anymore?
Because then you have to ask, well, who am I?
Exactly.
If mom is this, who am I now? Now, you know, your identity becomes shattered.
Awesome.
And that could have like a lot of repercussions as to, you know, things that have happened in her life, and her motivations
Definitely.
come into question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that final confrontation could even be like, the climax could even be her either meeting the mom or like coming into like some sort of space where the mom is there and maybe she doesn't even realize it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's some sort of like major conflict there that causes her to want to like kind of get rid of this knowledge that, you know, she learned from whatever's in this briefcase.
Yeah. It's like she's, you know, Godfather Part 1, anybody? Michael finds out what his family is involved in, but he's in too deep. So he goes all the way, becomes the Godfather himself, right?
I can't help but think as I listen to Celeste, like someone, Celeste is her name, Celeste we go. And as I listen to her, I'm thinking of maybe someone who has been adopted. And so when she said, mom is dead, I'm like, okay, she has this briefcase, she has papers. It means that she has been in some activity that surrounding paperwork. Maybe she was looking for her parent, maybe she was looking for her mom. Maybe what she found out in the end caused her to take all of that stuff that she has gone through and throw it out. And now like she's make the decision to just probably live without mom or something like that. I don't know. I'm thinking adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that sounds like a great, like that's the falling action. How are these things tying up? And then her new normal is all this information she knows about her mom. Like, how does she go on with that information? And it seems like she's going to bury the evidence and pretend she doesn't know. She's going to throw it into the lake.
But she also can be releasing by throwing it into the lake, standing there and smiling. It's like, I let this all go.
Yeah.
It could be buried, but it also could be a form of releasing in my head.
Yeah. Like she
Right,
never
yeah,
never asked
the
for
sins
this.
of the mothers are not my sins.
Amazing. Absolutely. Yeah. She never asked for this life. She uncovered this dirty truth she never wanted to be a part of, but she's making the choice to throw it all away. I like it. And
even if she could benefit financially from it.
Yeah. Even if she could, yeah, like that, there's your temptation. Yeah. Amazing. I love this. This is, I'm glad I picked the same resolution as the last time I did this, because the stories that we've come up with are so vastly different. The last time there was laser technology, it's kind of like Die Hard. It was crazy, very science fiction. And this is more of your gritty procedural, true detective, John Grisham kind of feeling. I love it. So that's awesome. I like, thank you, Celeste and Sharon and Aditi, for jumping in there. I really like what we came up with here. And the point of this exercise for all of us, you know, introverted writer types, is that we're all storytellers. You see, we came up with something that was compelling and had a ton of interesting elements, maybe even some subplots, in just a couple of minutes. So no matter what your background is, whether you're in the arts or not, we all have stories. Like, that's how humans connect to one another. So we all have stories to tell, and a screenplay is just one way you can express that internal story and share with the rest of the world and connect with other people. So thanks for participating in that little exercise. And this is the moment where I drop the 1 Minute Film Festival. As you might know if you follow us on social media or the web, we're in the midst of the first ever Pitt 1 Minute Film Festival. The only rule is that your film needs to be 60 seconds or less. So if you feel comfortable behind the camera, we'd love to see your submissions. They can be music video, narrative, documentary, experimental, whatever you want it to be, as long as it's 60 seconds or less, we'd love to see it. Those submissions are open until October 26th. Additionally, if you feel you can express yourself better through the written word, we're also having a 1-page screenplay competition / showcase. So like I said, 1 page equals 1 minute. So if you can tell a compelling story in 1 page, and that is not very much, that 55 lines of text, we'd love to see that too. I really think the limitation can spark a lot of creative problem solving. So I'm excited to see what folks come up with for that. And I hope you will all consider submitting. We've got a little under 4 weeks left. So the month of October is production month. All right, and as a promise, here are some screenwriting resources for everybody. The Internet Movie Script Database is a great place where you can see not just Hollywood scripts, but movies that you would have seen in theaters. You can find their screenplays on this website. It's really interesting to go through from, some of them are first drafts, some of them are final shooting drafts, and kind of see the differences in formatting and what some maybe more famous directors can get away with in their screenplays. You'll see them break all of the rules I just explained in this intro. The Blacklist is a really cool resource. They have blogs and podcasts and things, and they do a roundup of scripts that made their rounds around LA but never got picked up. They have a panel of agents from different studios and production companies that select and vote for their favorites that they read throughout the year. A lot of these books were assigned reading for me in film school, and I think they are all pretty good resources if you're starting out or need a refresher. 3 Uses of the Knife by David Mamet, Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. Now, Save the Cat is a really popular plot beat breakdown formula that you'll see everywhere online. Everyone loves Save the Cat. Story by Robert McKee is great. The Hero with a Thousand Faces is Joseph Campbell. That's kind of a psychological approach to stories, the archetypical characters that come up in mythology all the way to present day. And On Writing by Stephen King. Very prolific writer who has a lot to say on the craft. And here's some software that you can check out. Obviously, Celtx we talked about a little bit. Like I said, I think that it's all cloud-based and you have to pay for it now, but it's a very powerful tool that also includes production scheduling and this kind of thing. Scrivener is also a very popular one, as is Final Draft. Slugline is kind of a more minimalist application that is also available for your iPhones. And like I said, Microsoft Word has a template for a screenplay to get you started. It's free. That's honestly what I would recommend before you pay for any professional software. You know, it's not going to be as clean and nice as, you know, Celtx or Slugline, but it'll get you started, and can't complain about the price tag. And there are too many apps to name, really. A lot of these desktop softwares have their own apps as well, but you know, just browse through the App Store or Google Play. You'll find tons of screenwriting apps. And like I said, they all follow basic template of Courier 12-point font and all that kind of stuff. So you really can't go too wrong. And that is the end of my slideshow. So I'm going to stop the share and come back. And thank you all again for coming and bearing with me as I ramble my way through the basics of screenwriting. It's a really big topic and it's a lot to cover in one class. So I do hope you all will come to 102 and it seems like there's some good interest. So it would be great to do some more of these in the future. If you have any suggestions or topics like production Bibles that you want to see covered in a workshop, let us know. You can email us at creative@pitt.edu. And check out the 1 Minute Film Festival. We'd love to see what you come up with. So.